The House will come to order.
The prayer will be offered by guest chaplain Reverend Jeremy Legansky from Immaculate Conception Church, Elmhurst, Illinois.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we praise you, we love you, and we thank you for this day. Draw near to these members of Congress. Remind them of their calling to serve the true common good. Help them to be instruments of unity, peace, and reconciliation in our country and throughout the world. Bless them, guide them, and fill them with an abundance of your grace. May they decide everything for the well-being of all, and may they never turn aside from your will. May all that they do begin from you and by you be brought to completion. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be offered today by the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 7 of Rule 20, I move a call of the House.
Under Clause 7B of Rule 20, the chair confers recognition for that purpose. Without objection, a call of the House is ordered. Members will record their presence by electronic device.
And so it begins. First of all, the establishment of a quorum, getting all the members that are supposed to be there on record that they are there. And then after that, what's expected will be nominating speeches from both the Republican and Democratic sides. And then the actual count, each of the representatives being called by their last name, standing up and saying who they will support as the next Speaker of the House. This will play out into the afternoon and for several hours. You can stay close to C-SPAN and C-SPAN the app if you want to watch along. You can call us and give us your thoughts as well on the process. 202-748-8921 for Republicans, 202-748-8920 for Democrats, and all others 202-748-8922. Up until the point where we start the process, joining us now, Reese Gorman of the Washington Examiner. He covers Congress for that publication. Mr. Gorman, good morning to you, or good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
Tell me what you're watching for to play out over the next couple of hours.
Yeah, so this quorum call will be important to see how many members are absent. That will show us how many votes Mike Johnson can lose and still become Speaker on the Republican side. Now, there has not been as much opposition against him as you've seen the past two candidates that have been nominated, Scalise, Jordan, and then Emmer, who was a nominee for 4 hours. So it is likely that he will become Speaker today, but I think you have a couple absences, so he might only be able to lose 3 GOP votes, where usually it would be 4. And so there is a tight margin, so it's still up. I mean, there's still a possibility he will go to he will have to go to second ballot, but the opposition really is not there like we've seen for the past nominees.
Has any opposition emerged since last night?
No, actually, the opposite has happened. We've seen multiple people that voted present in the room are now planning on voting for him on the floor. That includes Thomas Massie of Kentucky, French Hill of Arkansas, who voted present, and now they're going to be voting for him on the floor. They're supporting him. And so that really shows that he might very well become Speaker on this first ballot, because there's not really much public opposition. I mean, Mike Lawler, a Republican from New York, a moderate Republican, voted for him in the room, so he would support Mike Johnson on the floor. And he was one of the moderate members that opposed Jordan on all 3 ballots. So this is really kind of looking good for Mike Johnson. And now there might be some people who are just not making their position known. but that does not seem very likely right now.
Is there a sense of the pitch that Mike Johnson gave his fellow Republicans going into this to gain their support?
Yes, so we just received a letter that he sent to his colleagues on Monday, that kind of laid out his policy priorities, laid out his plan for the appropriation process, and how he would avoid a government shutdown. In this kind of letter, he laid out that one of his first orders of business would be to pass McCall's resolution that's Chairman McCall of Foreign Affairs to condemn Hamas, and basically a resolution condemning Hamas and supporting Israel. Right after that, it would be to go straight into a stopgap continuing resolution funding measure that would fund the government through either January 15th or April 15th, depending on where the conference is at, to give them time to work on those 12 appropriation bills and pass them. And so his plan is to pass a stopgap measure, because as you remember, the government funding runs out November 17th. So it's really possible that we have a government shutdown. We're really coming right up onto the wire there. So he wants to extend that to give us more time to work on appropriation bills, to pass these measures to ensure the government stays funded. And so he wants to start working on those individually. The House has already passed a couple. They need to pass more. The Senate has not passed any. So you're going to have to pass them going to conference. So you're going to need time to do that. And that's really something he wants to focus on. He wants, like McCarthy and like all the other speaker nominees and candidates prior to him, they don't want an omnibus. They don't want a minibus. They want each 12 individual appropriation bills. So that's what he said that he's committed to doing, is ensuring that those 12 appropriation bills get passed.
Mr. Gorman, there's other reporting this morning this afternoon from Senator Romney apparently saying about Mike Johnson, apparently experience isn't necessary for the speaker job. We're down to folks who haven't had leadership or chairmanship roles, which means their administration of the House will be a new experience for them. Taking that vein, is there concern about the learning curve that Mike Johnson faces should he become House Speaker?
I think there's always going to be a learning curve, yes. One thing is he is currently vice chair of the House Republican Conference, so he is in leadership. Now, there does not compare to being speaker whatsoever. I mean, Emmer definitely had a lot of experience because he was whip. Scalise had a lot of experience because he was majority leader. That learning curve would have been a lot smaller than what Mike Johnson's is going to be. But again, he's going to, McCarthy's still, and I think McCarthy still being a member of Congress is going to help him out a lot. He can lean on McCarthy for advice. Scalise is also from Louisiana. They know each other really well. Mike Johnson's called Scalise a really good friend. Scalise can help him out as well. And so I think you're going to see people really helping him out. And Mike Johnson's a policy guy. He's not he's not a real politics guy. He loves policy. He's very a social conservative. He cares about funding the government, fiscal conservative. And so I think you're going to see a lot of policy stuff come out of here, and he really is smart on policy. But then you're also going to see him have to lean on people like McCarthy, people like Emmer and Scalise for the more political side, kind of learning how to wrangle the conference together. I think that is going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be hard, especially in this narrow majority that you see. People are okay with blocking whatever comes to the floor, whatever bill comes to the floor that they don't like. And they want everything they want or nothing at all. So I think it is definitely going to be hard to go straight into this position. But he has people that he can lean on for sure.
You use the term wrangling the conference. That goes to questions about Representative Johnson's style, particularly with dealing with the various factions of the Republican conference. How would you characterize that?
Yeah, I think you could kind of look at where he got his votes from. I mean, people from all across different sides of the Republican conference supported him. I mean, like I said, Lawler, a moderate, supported him. Then you had people like Marjorie Taylor Greene supporting him, his Freedom Caucus. So you have these all sides of the conference coming, like, supporting him. And I think that's something that you are going to see, kind of his ability. I mean, people like Mike Johnson. Now you have people that might necessarily agree with him on everything, because as I mentioned, he's a very social conservative. But I think that he'll be able to talk with people. He has the relationships. But again, it's going to be hard, especially for someone that's never had to do it before. Like you mentioned, he also does have a chairmanship. So he hasn't had to kind of wrangle even a small group of members to vote for something. So it's going to be really difficult. And this is a conference where it's hard to do it if you have years and years of experience, as we saw with McCarthy. It's going to be extremely hard to do it, especially if you don't have any experience whatsoever. But he does have the relationships. I've talked to a lot of people. There really hasn't been many people that have said a bad word about him personally. And so it doesn't seem like anyone necessarily dislikes the guy. But again, on policy stuff, it's going to be hard to wrangle the conference together just in general because of such the majority and the opinions and that these members have.
The Democrats, several have already said, and going back to Mr. Johnson's statements concerning the 2020 election, the positioning he took there, what does that mean, particularly from criticisms on the Democratic side, should he become Speaker?
Yeah, I think you're good. I mean, they're saying that he's Jim Jordan with a sport coat, is what the DCCC said today, and other Democrat lawmakers have said the same thing. Now, I mean, there's not much difference between Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson when it comes to policy and beliefs. They're both staunch conservatives, and so I think the Democrats really look up. And again, Mike Johnson he led an amicus brief to kind of against the 2020 election results. He did, and he was kind of against certifying the election. But I think one thing you're seeing is the Democrats are really going to hold on to this. They're trying to compare him to Jim Jordan. They're trying to tie him to this and saying that the House is electing a MAGA extremist to the head of the speakership. And so I think that's something you're going to see in elections as well, as people try and tie this. But one thing with Mike Johnson is he's not a household name. And like Jim Jordan, you could put in an ad with a moderate Republican and people know who Jim Jordan is. Mike Johnson is not a household name. Not a lot of people know who Mike Johnson is before yesterday, just because he's not out in front of the cameras all the time. He does not hold a chairmanship. He's not a high-ranking leadership official. So I think it's going to be hard for them to tie it to him, but they are definitely holding on to that because he was instrumental in the 2020 election, and he's very conservative, and he led the amicus brief. So I think a lot of these things you see Democrats tying to try Republicans too.
Reese Gorman, who reports for the Washington Examiner, covering Congress, talking about today's lead up to the vote, seeing if Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, becomes the next House Speaker. Mr. Gorman, thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So right now, as you heard our guest say, we're in the process of the establishment of a quorum where people will sign in and make sure that they're all where they need to be. And then after that, the process begins. We'll take your calls as the afternoon plays on. 202-748-8921 for Republicans, 202-748-8920 for Democrats, and others, 202-748-8922. Text us at 202-748-8903. Matt from Rhode Island, Republican line, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
How's it going? Thank you for having me on. I think today is going to be the day where we actually get a speaker elected. Mike Johnson seems to be a good pick, not even just for moderate Republicans, but mainly more America First MAGA types, such as Matt Gaetz, hopefully, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I think, honestly, we're not going to have more of a holdup in the House. I'd be very surprised if we end up having a holdup at all. But I think, honestly, if I'm being honest, this was probably one of the best decisions that Matt Gaetz has ever made. I agree with him on ousting Kevin McCarthy, mainly because Kevin McCarthy didn't, at all do what he promised back in January. So even though, we kind of had a infighting in the Republican Party in the House for about 3 weeks, at the end of the day, we're probably going to be electing a speaker, and I'm happy to see it at the end of the day.
Okay. Frank in New Jersey, independent line.
How you doing today? Thank you for taking my call. I'm a soon-to-be independent. I actually just sent in my change of form yesterday after this debacle, what's going on with the Republican Party. Very, very upsetting. And listening to the news last night on a neighboring station with a very respected reporter who I like a lot, actually stating that without Trump, they're not going to elect a speaker, meaning to me that Trump is controlling this whole thing. And that's very upsetting to me that one person would wield that kind of power. That being said, I think I like Mike Johnson, fresh blood up on the dais, and I think we might be pretty good with him. But
okay,
that's not changing my opinion. I'm going to go independent as soon as they validate my form.
Gotcha. Representative Ralph Norman outside of Capitol Hill talking to reporters about today's vote.
You can trust him, and if he can't do something, he'll tell you that.
Do you have any concerns about how inexperienced he is as a leader? He hasn't done a lot of fundraising yet. Are there any concerns about that as you guys try to take the majority, keep the majority?
No, Melanie, he, being speaker, you have to do a lot of things well, at one time. He's good at that. He's been up here. He served one term in the state legislature, and he's a magnet for people. You don't. It's hard to dislike Mike Johnson. That's the good thing about it. And you'll see on the floor today, he'll get this on the first ballot.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for stopping.
Appreciate the job y'all do.
Again, those interviews taking place outside of Capitol Hill. We'll weave those in during the time together. Let's hear from John in Columbia, Missouri. Hello, Democrats line. John in Columbia, Missouri, Democrats line. Hello.
Hello. I think that this whole speaker debacle is just absolutely insane. Mike Johnson, it's kind of ironic that Republicans are going to vote for him now when they didn't want to vote for Jim Jordan. He's the same person. I mean, he voted to decertify the election. He was part of the amicus brief to decertify the election. They're just going with whatever Trump wants, and that's not what they should be doing. I think that that's absolutely insane, and I think that Republicans need to go back and find a better candidate than Mike Johnson. We don't need extremists leading the House of Representatives.
From South Carolina, Republican line, we'll hear from Angel.
Yes. Hi, how are you? My concern is that both the Republicans and Democrats are falling for the problems that we're having in Israel, and basically Iran has been paying off Obama. And,
okay, well, that doesn't
Biden
relate to the House Speaker race. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah. I have all to say about that. I think Trump should become House Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, that's Angel there in South Carolina. Jake Sherman reporting from Punchbowl News saying that if Mike Johnson, he sent this out on X, by the way, if Mike Johnson wins the speakership, his life will change immediately. He'll have a gigantic police detail and will be charged with hiring a huge staff to manage the House of Representatives and a huge Republican policy agenda. He has to raise millions of dollars also, as far as his fundraising duties will include, should he become Speaker of the House after today's vote. Let's go to New Jersey Independent Line. This is Mike. Hello. Mike in New Jersey Independent Line. Hello.
Hello.
You're on. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Mike from New Jersey, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the Republicans are chaotic. They need to find a speaker instead of Mike Johnson, like a Mitt Romney, who's really conservative. Most of the Republicans are all corrupted anyway, and the Democrats. I'm starting to hate the politics of this. Thank you.
The call of the House still has 150 members to go before they can start the actual nominating process. Brandon in New Jersey, Democrats line.
So a man who continues to stand in favor of collecting a paycheck while not working will run our government with the intent that people don't deserve social safety nets. He says, how about if a child, this is to a doctor, how about if a child is halfway out of the birth canal? Is an abortion permissible then? The same guy who believes the election was stolen. But hey, what he lacks in character, actual conviction, and experience, he makes up for by being a lapdog to a man with dozens of indictments. This should turn out great. I'm excited for the vote. I'm going to watch it like sports.
Okay, that's Brandon in New Jersey. Chad Pergram reporting for Fox News saying that Speaker nominee Johnson writing a Dear Colleague letter to plan to fund the government past November 17th. It would fund the government on an interim basis with a CR, which would expire either on January 15th or April 15th. And that's based on the consensus of a working group. He sent that out on his X feed if you want to read it there. Victoria in Virginia, Republican line.
Hello, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I'm just hoping that, we can all agree, Republicans and Democrats, to vote somebody in that's going to work for the people. And I also just wanted to say, everybody go watch the Shipwreck Show on YouTube.
Not yet.
In California, Independent Line, Sid, hello.
Oh, hi there. Sorry, I did not know I was online. So three things. I'm a frustrated Gen Z voter who's just fed up with the Republican Party at this point. I'll just be voting Democratic down ballot.
Wait, are you a
in
Democrat or are
2020.
you an independent?
I'm a Democratic-leaning independent. I'm hoping this speakership will finish up. I think Katie Porter should be president in 2028. And I want C-SPAN viewers to subscribe to Let's Talk Elections.
Okay, let's go to Glenda in Kansas City. Democrats line, hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say that really looking at this Republican Party is nothing like someone my stepfather would have voted for. He was a straight ticket Republican, even though I'm a Democrat mostly. I have split my ticket in the past. This is disgraceful, and I am just disappointed that they can't come up with somebody who can at least agree that the election was not stolen. You know, my stepfather would refer to them as 000 for allowing Trump to dictate the terms of who can be Speaker of the House to them, and I'm referring to Tom Emmer. Maybe I should say 666, and thank you for taking my call.
Olivia Beavers, the reporter, says that as of this morning, it was Representative Johnson on the cusp of grabbing that speaker's handle. He flipped 3 present votes in his favor, and no House Republicans have publicly come forward against him, nor did any of the House GOP internal meeting yesterday as well. So that's the state of play as we wait for the nomination process to begin, with 84 members still to complete this call of the House. Again, after that, nominating speeches, and then after that, people will cast their votes for the next Speaker of the House. This is on our Republican line. In Michigan, Oscar, hello.
Hi, it's Oscar, and thank you. We are living in unprecedented times. We are in deep trouble as a country, and for anybody that's pushing back against this not being the normal status quo process, shame on you. I think we need to go through and elect constitutional conservatives for the Republican conference, and I think it is great that the Republicans are challenging each other to find the right person and not just going with the D.C. status quo, corrupt, lobby-driven business as usual. And I would challenge everybody to look at it from that way. Thank you.
We'll hear next from Lillian. Lillian in Pennsylvania. Hi there. Independent line.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. First-time caller, long-time viewer. Yes, I'm an independent, severe independent, as Romney would say. I am disappointed in the Democrats wasting their votes instead of being the adults in the room. We've known for a while that the Republicans were in great disarray. It's not the old Republican Party. It's a Trump Republican Party now. And the Democrats keep voting for the same person, Jeffries, and he's not going to get it. They should be doing better than that and really going across the aisle and supporting someone who is in the middle. I see problems with both sides, and I agree with some of the things that the Republicans espouse and some of the things that the Democrats espouse, but mostly the Democrats in general at this point. So Democrats, stop wasting your votes and reach across the aisle. Don't wait for an RSVP from the Republicans. You're not going to get an invitation from the Republicans. Take it upon yourselves. Think country before you think party.
Okay, that's Lillian there in Pennsylvania. Let's take you back in time to 2017 when freshman House member Mike Johnson did an interview with C-SPAN talking about a variety of topics, including how he viewed the importance of civility and decorum in the House of Representatives.
People say, what's the most surprising thing about serving in Congress? And to be honest, people are surprised to hear this back home when I say it, but it's the level of collegiality that you find amongst the colleagues here. And it's not just within the various conferences, but even across the aisle. So in our freshman class, for example, it's been a great experience. There's 55 of us that came in together, and we've all just worked really well together. We've developed some real friendships, and there's a common sense of unity over overarching purposes. At our freshman retreat, we all talked about how we wanted to change the tone in Washington and raise the level of civility. And so I drafted a document called the Commitment to Civility, and 53 out of 55 freshman members signed on to that. We literally made a contract with one another that we would raise the level of decorum around here and treat one another with dignity and respect. And even when we disagree, do it in an agreeable fashion, because I think that sets an important example.
That interview, by the way, the full interview that he did and conducted with us in 2017, available at our website at cspan.org. Let's hear from Michael in San Diego, Democrats line.
Yes, hello, this is Mike Brogan. I'm calling from California, but I'm a landowner in Red River Parish in Louisiana, and my mother went to Northwestern in Natchitoches, so I think that maybe make me a constituent of Mike Johnson. I don't believe in any of his values. I don't believe in any of his policies, particularly guns and gun protection, gun violence, protecting people from gun violence in this country. I don't believe in his whole policies related to the environment. And I'm certainly very concerned about his statements about his support of our troops in the Ukraine. You know, my father was a Marine. My mother was in the Navy in San Diego. And I was raised with a certain amount of values. And Mike Johnson doesn't represent any of those.
Okay, that's Michael in San Diego. Olivia Beavers of Politico reporting from the scene, so to speak, saying that she is now seeing some House Democrats going up and shaking Representative Johnson's hand. What that means, I don't know as far as the final tally is concerned. But again, watch as we watch it play out this afternoon. In Florida, Independent Line, Tom is next.
Thanks for taking my call. I just think the last few weeks have been indicative of the overall low approval rating for Congress. Having said that, I think there's plenty of blame to go around. Yes, the Republican side has been chaotic, more so than it needed to be. However, I think there's some representatives looking to make names for themselves in a very important matter. I will say, though, that at least they had the courage to stand up in front of their party, their party leadership, and broad view of their constituency, whereas as opposed to the Democratic side, where these representatives tend to pound their fists on the Capitol steps, but when they get to the chamber, they look to Akeem and Nancy and become weak at the knees and just vote with leadership. So I don't think anything's going to improve until we see more independent members on the floor. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to the vote this afternoon.
Alex in Phoenix, Arizona, Republican line.
Yeah, I think Johnson will make a great speaker. I think everyone should look up what subversion is, and Epstein didn't hang himself.
From Todd in Chattanooga, Democrats line.
I think this whole process has just shown that the Republican Party is out of step with the majority of all Americans when they're only concerned about finding somebody that didn't want the election, thought the election was stolen, and they're against same-sex marriage. And they're just out of step with everything with the majority of all Americans. And the whole thing that Trump has to approve who they're going to vote, that's just ridiculous. I mean, he is a criminal. He has got, indictments against him. He's got charges against him. He's already been proven to be a sexual assault. To me, it's all ridiculous. And it just proves that the Republican Party right now is not the old Republican Party. So as they kick Liz Cheney out, they prove that they are not the old Republican Party. She was a true conservative. She stood up to him. She stood up to Trump. And they ought to be ashamed of the press conference last night when someone asked a question about the election and that denial, and Representative Fox from North Carolina told them to shut up.
Okay. Again, you can see that on our website and the app, too. It's the Human Events' John Gizzi reporting that Representatives Massey, the Republican of Kentucky, Amidala of Nevada, and Hill of Arkansas, there were 3 who voted present In the last vote of the conference, all said this morning they're going to vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker. If that's the case, he's got the magic 217 number and is expected to win the Speaker's gavel on the floor today. Again, that's a prediction right now until the actual votes are cast and everything is done. From Arkansas, Republican line, this is Jackson. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing? You know, I think that a lot can be said about what this election interference persona that Mike Johnson and a lot of the Republicans in the House have is spoon-fed crap. I think that the American people need to do their own research, create your own opinions, and make your own observations instead of listening to your representatives who have obviously based opinions. You know, these are the same people who believe that Trump indictments are real and, you know, not election interference committed by our president, which is just horrific.
So what's your own opinion of Representative Johnson then?
I think he's going to be a great speaker. I think people want to paint him as extreme because of his opinion on the 2020 election, and I think that's false. I think he's very conservative, but I don't think he's far right. You know, I think one other thing I want to point out, just while I have the time, I think any Republicans that are leaving the party because of this charade that the Republicans are putting on in the House, I think they don't have conservative values. I think rather they care about throwing a tantrum almost because the government is governing amongst themselves. You know.
Jim is next in Dallas, Texas, independent line. Hi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You've cut people off about not talking about Speaker of the House. I can't believe you let that Tennessee guy go. The last few weeks, though, have been very challenging, but in my opinion, awesome. The blessing to us is it's given us a chance to see who is and who is not for we the people. Not casting any aspersions because I'm independent, but walking in total lockstep is not we the people. Hopefully soon we will now have a Speaker of the House and we get on with the people's business and not just the individual congressman's business.
So what's your assessment of Representative Johnson himself?
I think that he's going to be awesome. And
Why
I think
is that?
I think he's going to be awesome and he's going to be fair because of some of the things that people have said just before you took my call. Let's see the evidence. It's not been shown to us. Let's see the 14,000 hours of tape of January 6th. Let's see what really happened.
Well,
and
going back to
decide.
Representative Johnson himself, you said he was going to be awesome. Okay. Specifically, why?
Because you played his tape of 2017, and it wants to have civility in the House, and they signed this deal. I would suspect right now, if you got him off to the side, he'd go, it's not as civil as I thought it was when he first got in there. But he still maintained his civility.
Okay, let's go to Margaret. Margaret in California, Democrats line. Hi.
Hello. I'm calling about Johnson, and he's an election denier. He wants to impeach President Biden, and he wants no money for Ukraine. So I don't see why people want the Democrats to help elect him to be Speaker. I think that's crazy. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
That's Margaret in California. If you look at the tally, 9 people, 4 Republicans, 5 Democrats yet to finish the call of the House, so to speak, as that's the beginning process of the nominating and election of a new House Speaker. Again, from the reporting we've seen and people we've talked to this morning and afternoon, it looks like a good path for Representative Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, possibly set to become the next Speaker of the House 3 weeks after the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted from his position. John in West Virginia, Republican line. Hi.
Hey, how we doing? I'm Carl. I've been watching this for the last couple of weeks, and it's exciting just watching the process. And I'm a Republican, living in Huntington, West Virginia, and I think it's fantastic what's going on, and I think Mike Johnson is going to be a great candidate, and I hope he gets it through first go.
Why do you think he's going to be a great candidate?
Well, he's a attorney, so he knows the law, and we've seen in the past he's worked with other groups and things like that, and I think that's good. He's a conservative, and I like that. I'm a conservative, and I just think he'll work great with the people.
Okay, that's John there in West Virginia. This is Steve. Steve in Alabama, independent line.
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to chime in a little bit. I love being an independent because then you can really see the circus that's going around some of these MAGA Democrats and MAGA Republicans, because our mind is not already made up for us on having to vote a specific party. But one good thing I heard you chime in on is one good thing about Justin is his age. Okay, at least he's not a 60, 70-year-old person yet in the office. But, you know, like the other caller said, look, this isn't yesteryear's Republicans, but the Democrats are by far yesteryear's Democrats. So therefore, more people do need to become independent and learn how to think and do research for yourself before having any certain political party telling you how to vote.
Okay, down to 6 members right now to finish off this call of the House. 1 lone Republican and 5 Democrats still waiting before the process can begin. Mary Ann in North Carolina, Democrats line, hi.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm calling about the speaker. I do my research, as the last caller alluded to, and I just looked at his votes and Johnson. I also want to mention that's so important that we seem to be missing from this conversation is that he's second in line to become the president. So all of this discussion of his lack of leadership and did he get elected, become a congressman in 2017, as I'm hearing?
He was a freshman in 2017, yes.
Correct. So he has very, very little experience in government, and he's literally 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. The fact that he was an election denier doesn't make him a conservative. You know, I voted Republican in the past, obviously never again. And this process is also very bad for our country.
If I may ask, what did you learn from looking at his votes?
What I learned is that he voted against aid for Ukraine, which will make us less safe. He also voted against, declaring the election valid, which is a problem because I voted for Biden, and 81 million of us did. We didn't rally, we didn't wear hats, but we voted. So his record as what they say is a conservative isn't kind of like a Reagan conservative. He voted with raising the debt, $7 trillion, because of tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. I don't see how that's conservative.
Okay, that's Mary Ann there in North Carolina. The Melanie Zanona of CNN reporting that Mike Johnson, the speaker designee, will be nominated by the conference chair of the Republicans, Elise Stefanik of New York. That will supposedly take place on the floor, according to sources given to CNN. Mark is next. Mark in Ohio, Republican line.
Hi. I am a conservative, have been one, and I noticed, I think Mike Johnson is going to be a great addition. He wants everyone to act civil, because I've watched the decline of everything since we had Donald Trump come in office when the media bashed him. And I don't like that there's propaganda. And I think Mike Johnson, he reached across the aisle because he's an attorney. Who cares if he's young? He's smart. I think he's going to be great. It's a unit party now. These Democrats can go on speakers and bash and raise fury against justices in the Supreme Court, and they don't get hammered. And these Democrats are radical. They need to be.
Well, what gives you evidence that Representative Johnson's going to reach across the aisle?
Because he said he wanted calmness and respect amongst the Democrats, and they disrespect everybody from justices in the Supreme Court and everything. They're so radical. You had Schumer calling for radicalness at a speech against the justice in the Supreme Court.
Okay. Not our topic, but we'll go to Heidi in Massachusetts, independent line.
Hi. As more of a centrist-leaning or Democrat-leaning centrist, I believe that the Democrats don't really have a chance of winning any of the speaker votes. So I'm a little confused I think a lot of the Democrats in America feel the same way as I do, and I think a lot of the centrists do too, that there's not really much of a chance for the Democrats to win. So I think there's a lot of people in both the House and in America who don't really have a choice for Speaker, and they don't really have a choice for like anybody in the House to win, because there just isn't anybody ideal for people who aren't Republican, because the Democrats have no chance of winning, and Democrats and centrists don't want a Republican Speaker.
Democrats line from Ohio. Marianne, hi.
Hi, I'm just interested that these Republicans have made a mockery of our government. And just as the woman prior to that gentleman, this Johnson fella has denied the results, and he also has openly said he will keep the office of the party closed. So those two votes, when they show him on a map, he has no problem in closing and keeping the speaker's job closed, and he is also a denier. And the Republicans, this is all chess for them, and all they're trying to do is bat to the left and bat to the right when the right person is only 5 votes shy, and that is Hakeem. And all I could say is that I wish that people would start thinking of the public and America and not party.
Why would you expect Republicans to support the House Minority Leader?
Just because there's a handful beyond all of those other crazies, and they're attached, and all the ones that are absolutely attached to the other person that has no play in this, and yet and is under indictment. And the bottom line is it took, you're only 5 votes away. And I know that in their oath of office, when they took it, the day they took it, they are supposed to vote for America, not their party. So if somebody had given a job to a person in their office and they choose to do it the way they want, and they're not doing anything that the people want for that job, you have to just bump them away until other things get better. But right now, this is a mockery going on, and every single Republican has denied additional help for Ukraine when Ukraine is against our biggest ally and in the pocket and the best friend of everybody who's denying that Joe Biden was our president.
Okay, let's go to Steve in Missouri, Republican line.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Regarding Mike, I think he's going to be great. He's going to bring back decorum to discussions. It's okay to be to disagree on things. It's not okay to be disagreeable in the process of it. And right now, there's been a lot of that going on. The other thing I've noticed in a lot of the callers coming in, they think that this is a mockery, this process. This is the way the Founding Fathers built this and designed it. And you got to remember, the average Constitution lasts only 17 years across the world. Ours has lasted over 200 years. And that means a lot. That means it's been built correctly. And so this process, you just got to be patient on it. It's gonna work out, but it's done that way so that we can get it right. The swamp is so deep right now on both sides of it. He's going to have an uphill battle. He's going to have to deal with a lot of undecorum, people out there working against him. And I think as long as we can keep the decorum going, we can talk through the issues, find solutions. And I don't care which side the solution that helps the people comes from. If it comes from the Democrat side, let's go with it. If it comes from the Republican side, let's go with it. But the problem for so many years is if it comes from the other side of the aisle, we fight against it, even though it would help the American people, and that's got to stop.
Okay, let's go to Michael in Florida, independent line.
Hello. I think that the problem with the Republicans, especially the far-right Republicans, is that they believe it's their way and their way only. A prerequisite for living or being in Congress should be you have to believe in elections. That's the very foundation of democracy. So Mike Johnson may be a calmer, gentler Jim Jordan, but the prerequisite to be the Speaker of the House should be you have to believe in the election. Joe Biden won. The end of discussion. And that's my whole problem with the far right. They always say, we the people voted us. But they only are a small minority of one section of a House of Congress.
Okay. Michael there in Florida. Manu Raju of CNN reporting on his X feed saying that he asked the Democratic Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, about Mike Johnson's conservative politics versus Kevin McCarthy's, saying, quote, I don't believe his policies are more conservative than Kevin McCarthy's. There's no daylight between Mike Johnson and Kevin McCarthy on those issues. Says he doesn't regret the vote to oust McCarthy. So that's just some of the state of play as we wait for these final four people to finish the call of the House. Rudy in Texas, Democrats line. You are next. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning. How you doing?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know why they're always complaining about Biden being old. I think he's smarter than all these Republicans in there right now. They're picking somebody right now. Can you hear me?
Caller, you're going to have to stop listening to your television and just finish your thought, please.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and I'm just wondering why they keep putting these guys that are deniers and everything, and they're getting threatened by one man that's being impeached and everything, or being having to go to court for all these crazy things that he's done, and they're just listening to everything he says. I just don't understand what's wrong with these people.
Okay, we'll take you. It looks like the gavel is cut down. We'll go back to the House of Representatives.
Are all members recorded? On this roll call, 429 members have recorded their presence. The question now recurs on the election of Speaker. The tellers will please come forward to take their seats once again. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I didn't even notice. All right. The nominations are now in order. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Mr. Speaker Pro Temp, Madam Clerk, colleagues, on behalf of the House Republican Conference, I rise today to nominate the gentleman from Louisiana, Mike Johnson, as Speaker of the People's House. We convene this esteemed body today at a time of great crisis across America, a time of unprecedented challenges in this hallowed chamber, and a time when our most precious ally, Israel's very existence, is under attack from forces of evil. Yesterday, our dear colleague, our former conference chair, our chair of Energy and Commerce, Cathy McMorris Rodgers, nominated Mike Johnson in our conference. And she put it best, and I want to quote her today. She said, quote, "Trust has been broken and we have come to a standstill. How do we restore trust between members, leadership, and ultimately between Congress and we, the people?" Cathy went on to say, "There's a sense that it cannot be business as usual." She went on to note, above the Speaker's chair in the House chamber is our nation's motto, "In God we trust." Ms. McMorris Rodgers went on to say, "The times in which we are living demand boldness, unity, and transformational leadership that begins with trust in God and each other. Trust is when the magic happens." In the story of King David, we are reminded that man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, end quote. Today is the day that House Republicans will humbly look in our hearts and elect Mike Johnson as Speaker of the People's House. A man of deep faith, Mike epitomizes what it means to be a servant leader. A deeply respected constitutional lawyer, Mike has dedicated his life to preserving America's great principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mike is a titan on the Judiciary Committee and a dedicated member of the House Armed Services Committee. And as vice chair of our conference, he has united all of our members to speak clearly and boldly on behalf of the American people. A friend to all and an enemy to none, Mike is strong, tough, and fair, and above all, Mike is kind. And at this very moment, this Republican conference knows that we live in perilous times and the American people are hurting. Families are struggling under the pain of inflation caused by reckless far-left spending, unable to afford groceries, heat, or gas. We have an inhumane open border with millions illegally smuggled and trafficked, and tens of thousands of children lost in the chasm of the incompetence and negligence of the Biden administration. Israel is under attack by Iranian-backed Hamas terrorists committing atrocities, with Israelis suffering the bloodiest days in modern memory. Crime is skyrocketing on our streets, while there are vicious calls from the left to defund our great men and women in blue. American energy production has been crushed by Joe Biden's radical, failed, far-left Democrat policies, causing seniors, farmers, and families to pay more at the pump. And Americans fundamentally understand that the federal government has been illegally weaponized against we, the people, shredding the Constitution, targeting conservatives, parents, yes, I'll say it again. The federal government has been illegally weaponized against we, the people, shredding the Constitution, targeting conservatives, parents, and even Joe Biden's top political opponent. The people are looking to this great chamber to save America, and save America we will. embark on the path ahead, I am reminded of Galatians 6:9. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. House Republicans and Speaker Mike Johnson will never give up. Today is the day we get this done. May God bless our next Speaker, Mike Johnson. May God bless the United States of America. And I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tempore. I notice a little bit more of a smile on your face today than we have in the past. Mr. Speaker, I rise today at the direction of the Democratic caucus to place into nomination for the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries from New York. Mr. Speaker, you may agree with this, but we are back here 22 days into this Republican-manufactured chaos, and House Republicans have brought us to the exact same position that we were back then. All of the infighting, all of the disarray, just to end up where we were 3 weeks ago. These past few weeks, we have been left wondering if Republicans were truly intent on solving our issues, reopening the House of Representatives, and rallying around someone to lead this chamber. Or has this been about something else? Has this been about a focus of House Republicans to find the person who can pass their extreme litmus test to oppose marriage equality, enact a nationwide abortion ban without exceptions, gut Social Security and Medicare, and support overturning a free and fair election? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. No one. Nowhere in that candidate questionnaire is it about growing the middle class, helping our communities, keeping the cost of health care lower, and making life for everyday Americans better. The gentlewoman from New York said it right. This has been about one thing. This has been about who can appease Donald Trump. House Republicans have put their names behind someone who has been called the most important architect of the Electoral College objections. He's spearheaded, that's fair, we know how you feel. Yeah, you've made that clear. He's spearheaded the legal effort, joined by more than 100 of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, in support of a dangerous and baseless lawsuit to overturn the results of the 2020 election. On the eve of January 6th, some of my Republican colleagues even called this a failed strategy. Yet those same individuals plan to stand right next to him today. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, House Democrats believe that when members of this body voted to reject the results of the 2020 election, they forfeited their ability to lead this chamber. On this side of the aisle, we know what leadership looks like. Hakeem Jeffries has never turned his back on the will of the American people. The son of two social workers, he has always stood by the side of working families. The most pressing needs of everyday Americans are his North Star. He believes that everyone in America should have the opportunity to get ahead and achieve their version of the American dream. He believes that access to affordable health care is a right, not a privilege. He believes that reproductive freedom must be guaranteed, not stripped away. He believes that working families, not the wealthy and the well-connected, should be rewarded. He believes in growing the middle class so that everyone can succeed. He believes that our schools and our communities should be safe and free from gun violence. He believes that investing in public schools, not depriving students of fact-based education by banning books. He believes in taking care of our seniors and our veterans, not slashing their benefits. He believes in living up to the promise that America is a beacon of hope and a land of opportunity. He believes in defending democracy against all enemies and adversaries, foreign and domestic. He believes in standing by our allies, Israel and Ukraine. And he believes in keeping our government running and open. Let me be clear. This is not just a belief system. Leader Jeffries has the track record to back it up. He is certainly a far contrast from who Republicans have nominated, with or without their votes, to nominate today. But if House Republicans choose, they can still join us on a bipartisan path forward. Let's come together to fund our government, support our allies abroad, and deliver for working families. End the chaos and the dysfunction, end the extremism. Let's open up the people's house. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The reading clerk will now call the roll.
Adams. Jeffries. Adderholt. Johnson. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford. Johnson. Allen. Johnson. Allred. Jeffries. Amadei. Johnson. Armstrong. Johnson. Arrington. Johnson. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. Johnson. Bacon. Johnson. Baird. Johnson. Balderson. Johnson. Ballant. Jeffries. Banks. Johnson. Barr. Johnson. Berrigan. Jeffries. Bean of Florida. Johnson. Beatty. Jeffries. Bentz. Johnson. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Johnson. Byer. Byer. Bice. Johnson. Biggs. Johnson. Bilirakis. Johnson. Bishop of Georgia. Jeffries. Bishop of North Carolina. Johnson. Blumenauer. Jeffries. Blunt Rochester. Jeffries. Boebert. Johnson. Bonamici. Jeffries. Bost. Johnson. Bowman. Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Burkeen. Johnson. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Buck. Johnson. Bouchon. Johnson. Bazinski. Jeffries. Burchett. Johnson. Burgess. Johnson. Burleson. Johnson. Bush. Jeffries. Calvert. Johnson. Kamek. Johnson. Caravello. Jeffries. Carbajal. Jeffries. Cardenas. Jeffries. Carey. Johnson. Carl. Johnson. Carson. Jeffries. Carter of Georgia. Johnson. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Johnson. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Chavez de Reamer. Johnson. Sherfilis McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Siscomani. Johnson. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Johnson. Cloud. Johnson. Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde. Johnson. Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. Johnson. Collins. Johnson. Comer. Johnson. Connolly, Jeffries, Correa, Costa, Jeffries, Courtney, Jeffries, Craig, Jeffries, Crane, Johnson, Crawford, Johnson, Crenshaw, Johnson, Crockett, Jeffries, Crow, Jeffries, Cuellar, Jeffries, Curtis, Johnson, Davis of Kansas, Jeffries, Davidson, Johnson, Davis of Illinois, Jeffries, Davis of North Carolina, Jeffries, Dean of Pennsylvania, Jeffries, DeGette, Jeffries, Dela Cruz, Johnson, DeLauro, Jeffries, Del Bene, Jeffries, DeLuzio, Jeffries, DeSaulnier, Jeffries, Desjardins, Johnson, Diaz-Pizito, Johnson, Diaz-Balart, Johnson, Dingle, Jeffries, Doggett, Jeffries, Donalds, Johnson, Duarte, Johnson, Duncan, Johnson, Dunn of Florida, Johnson, Edwards, Johnson, Elsie, Johnson, Emmer, Johnson, Escobar, Jeffries, Eshoo, Jeffries, Espaillat, Jeffries, Estes, Johnson, Evans, Jeffries, Ezell, Johnson, Fallon, Johnson, Finstra, Johnson, Ferguson, Johnson, Finstad, Johnson, Fischbach, Johnson, Fitzgerald, Johnson, Fitzpatrick, Johnson, Fleischman, Johnson, Fletcher, Jeffries, Flood, Johnson, Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Johnson. Lois Frankel. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Johnson. Frost. Jeffries. Fry. Johnson. Fulcher. Johnson. Gates. Johnson. Gallagher. Johnson. Gallego. Gallego. Garamendi. Jeffries. Garbarino. Johnson. Mike Garcia. Johnson. Robert Garcia. Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Jimenez. Johnson. Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries. Gomez. Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Johnson. Vicente Gonzalez. Vicente Gonzalez. Good of Virginia. Johnson. Gooden of Texas. Johnson. Gosar. Johnson. Gottheimer. Jeffries. Granger. Johnson. Graves of Louisiana. Johnson. Graves of Missouri. Johnson. Green of Tennessee. Johnson. Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Johnson. Griffith. Johnson. Grijalva. Jeffries. Grothman. Johnson. Guest. Johnson. Guthrie. Johnson. Hageman. Johnson. Harder of California. Jeffries. Harris. Johnson. Harsbarger. Johnson. Hayes. Jeffries. Hearn. Johnson. Higgins of Louisiana. Johnson. Higgins of New York. Jeffries. Hill. Johnson. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Johnson. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Johnson. Houlihan. Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. Johnson. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. Johnson. Hunt. Johnson. Issa. Johnson. Ivy. Jeffries. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of North Carolina. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. Johnson. Jackson Lee. Jeffries. Jacobs. Jeffries. James. Johnson. Jayapal. Jeffries. 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 Johnson of Georgia.
Standing for reproductive freedom for women, I cast my vote for Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Johnson. Johnson of Ohio. Johnson. Johnson of South Dakota. Johnson. Jordan. Johnson. Joyce of Ohio. Joyce of Ohio. Johnson. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Camlogger Dove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane of New Jersey. Johnson. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Johnson. Kelly of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Kana. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Johnson. Kildee. Jeffries. Kiley. Johnson. Kilmer. Jeffries. Kim of California. Johnson. Kim of New Jersey. Jeffries. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Custer. Jeffries. Kustoff. Johnson. LaHood. Johnson. LaLota. Johnson. LaMalfa. Johnson. Lamborn. Johnson. Landsman. Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. Johnson. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latta. Johnson. LaTurner. Johnson. Lawler.
Mike
Johnson. Lee of California. Jeffries. Lee of Florida. Johnson. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez. Jeffries. Lesko. Johnson. Letlow. Johnson. Levin. Jeffries. Liu. Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Lucas. Johnson. Luke Kameyer. Johnson. Luna. Johnson. Luttrell. Johnson. Lynch. Jeffries. Mace. Johnson. Magaziner. Jeffries. Maliotakis. Johnson. Mann. Johnson. Manning. Jeffries. Massey. Johnson. Mast. Johnson. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McCarthy. Johnson. McCall. Johnson. McLean. Johnson. McClellan. Jeffries. McClintock. Johnson. McCullum. Jeffries. McCormick. Johnson. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McHenry. Johnson. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Ming. Jeffries. Muser. Johnson. Mfume. Jeffries. Miller of Illinois. Johnson. Miller of Ohio. Johnson. Miller of West Virginia. Johnson. Miller Meeks. Johnson. Mills. Johnson. Molinaro. Johnson. Molinar. Johnson. Mooney. Johnson. Moore of Alabama. Johnson. Moore of Utah. Johnson. Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moran. Johnson. Morelli. Jeffries. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Johnson. Nadler. Jeffries. Napolitano. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Neguse. Jeffries. Nels. Johnson. Newhouse. Johnson. Nickel. Jeffries. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Johnson. None of Iowa. Johnson. Obernolte. Johnson. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Johnson. Omar. Jeffries. Owens. Johnson. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Johnson. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pasquale. Jeffries. Payne.
Gentleman from New York, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Pelosi. Jeffries. Peltola. Jeffries. Pence. Johnson. Perez. Jeffries. Perry. Johnson. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Pfluger. Johnson. Phillips. Jeffries. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Porter. Jeffries. Posey. Johnson. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Johnson. Rogers of Washington. Johnson. Rogers of Alabama. Johnson. Rogers of Kentucky. Johnson. Rose. Johnson. Rosendale. Johnson. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. Johnson. Roy. Johnson. Ruiz. Jeffries. Rupersberger. Jeffries. Rutherford.
The very honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ryan. Jeffries. Salazar. Johnson. Salinas. Jeffries. Sanchez. Jeffries. Santos. Johnson. Sarbanes. Jeffries. Scalise.
Great state of Louisiana, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schiff. Jeffries. Snyder. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier. Jeffries. Swikert. Johnson. Austin Scott. Johnson. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Johnson. Sessions. Johnson. Sewell. Jeffries. Sherman. Jeffries. Sherrill. Jeffries. Simpson. Johnson. Slotkin. Jeffries. Smith of Missouri. Johnson. Smith of Nebraska. Johnson. Smith of New Jersey. Johnson. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Johnson. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Spanberger. Jeffries. Sparts. Johnson. Stansbury. Jeffries. Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Johnson. Steele. Johnson. Stefanik. Johnson. Stile. Johnson. Stubbe. Johnson. Stevens. Jeffries. Strickland.
For the protection of voting rights, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Strong. Johnson. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Takano. Jeffries. Tenney. Johnson. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Tiffany. Johnson. Timmons. Johnson. Titus. Jeffries. Tlaib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Trone. Jeffries. Turner. Johnson. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Johnson. Van Drew. Johnson. Van Dyne. Johnson. Van Orden. Van Orden. Vargas. Jeffries. Vasquez. Jeffries. Vesey. Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Wagner. Johnson. Wahlberg. Johnson. Waltz. Johnson. Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters. Jeffries. Watson Coleman.
As the only candidate who represents the integrity of this House,
Watson Coleman.
do I need to say Hakeem Jeffries again because I read?
Jeffries.
The House will come to order. The clerk, the staff, and the tellers deserve to have the attention of the House. The clerk will continue.
Weber of Texas. Johnson. Webster of Florida. Johnson. Winstrup. Johnson. Westerman. Johnson. Wexton. Jeffries. Wild. Jeffries. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of New York. Johnson. Williams of Texas. Johnson. Wilson of Florida. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson of South Carolina. Johnson. Whitman. Johnson. Womack.
With the 217th pick in the race for Speaker in the 3rd District of Arkansas, selects Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Yacom. Johnson. Zinke.
The next speaker, the People's House.
Johnson.
The clerk will now call the names of the members who did not answer the first call of the roll.
Byer. Jeffries. Who do you have? Boyle of Pennsylvania. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Correa. Correa. Gallego. Jeffries. Vicente Gonzalez. Vicente Gonzalez. Van Orden. Van Orden.
If there are any members who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time. In their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 429, of which the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 220 votes. And the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 209 votes. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress. The chair appoints the following committee to escort the speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean. The gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bergman. The gentlewoman from Washington, Mrs. Rogers. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Molinaro. The gentlewoman from Florida, Mrs. Comack. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Underwood. The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Jacobs. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett, and the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Graves, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the speaker-elect to the chair.
And you're watching live coverage of the new Speaker and his swearing-in ceremony, which is coming up in just a minute. Mike Johnson, Republican, Louisiana, been in Congress since first elected in 2016. He's on the Armed Services and Judiciary Committees currently. He will be taken off those committees after he becomes Speaker. And the swearing-in will happen, and potentially the House will do some business. But if they don't, we will be here to get your reaction to the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, the first Louisianian to become Speaker, and he is third in line for the presidency.
The House will come to order. Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. Speaker, the Speaker-elect Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana.
The House will come to order.
Speaker Mike Johnson, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Whip Clark, Chairman Aguilar, all of my colleagues in government on both sides of the aisle. It's an honor and a privilege to once again stand before you as House Democratic leader. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues whenever and wherever possible, for the good of the American people. And House Democrats have repeatedly done just that. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to avoid a catastrophic default on our debt that would have crashed the U.S. economy and triggered a job-killing recession. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to avoid a government shutdown that would have hurt everyday American. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to secure $16 billion in disaster assistance for Americans whose lives have been devastated by extreme weather events. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have been governing for the people. We continue to look forward to finding bipartisan common ground whenever and wherever possible. House Democrats will continue to partner with President Biden and Senate Democrats to put people over politics. House Democrats will continue to fight for lower costs, better paying jobs, safer communities, and to build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up and not the top down. House Democrats will continue to push back against extremism in this chamber and throughout the country. House Democrats will continue to protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid, protect our children, protect our climate, protect low-income families, protect working families, protect the middle class, protect organized labor, protect the LGBTQ community, protect our veterans, protect older Americans, protect the Affordable Care Act, protect the right to vote, protect the peaceful transfer of power, protect our democracy, and protect a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. These are blue lines in the sand, and we will work hard to make sure that they are never crossed. We must also continue to stand by President Biden as he works to bring American hostages and Israeli hostages held by Hamas back home. American hostages and Israeli hostages and international hostages back home. We must also stand by our friends on the international stage. And we have no better friend in the Middle East than the State of Israel. Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state. The special relationship between the United States and Israel is unbreakable. Our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, and Israel has a right to defend itself under the international rules of war against the brutal terror unleashed on its citizens by Hamas. Our ironclad commitment to Israel's security and the effort to defeat Hamas is not inconsistent with the goal of achieving a lasting and just peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. In many ways, it is a necessary ingredient because Hamas is not good for Israel, Hamas is not good for America, Hamas is not good for the free world, Hamas is not good for the democratic aspirations of the Palestinian people. We must also support Ukraine in its courageous effort to defeat Russian aggression. There are only two paths in front of us. We can either stand up for Ukraine or bow down to Vladimir Putin. That is not a difficult choice. We must stand up for America's national security. We must stand up for democracy. We must stand up for freedom. We must stand up for truth. We must stand up for the Ukrainian people until victory is won. It is my expectation that in the next week or so, the Senate will send over for consideration a bipartisan national security funding package for Israel, Ukraine, and our other allies throughout the free world. That also includes humanitarian assistance for Palestinian civilians and others who may be in harm's way. The House of Representatives should take up this national security package and humanitarian relief package immediately, in totality, and without delay. The time for gamesmanship is over. The time for brinksmanship is over. The time for partisanship is over. It's time to get back to doing the business of the American people. Let me conclude. Let me conclude with an observation about the state of our democracy. Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. He's doing a great job under difficult circumstances, and no amount of election denialism will ever change that reality. Not now, not ever. Throughout the years, presidents from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama, Dwight Eisenhower to Lyndon Baines Johnson have spoken to this chamber and urged us to put aside partisan politics for the good of the American people. President Lincoln spoke to this Congress on December 1st, 1862, in the middle of the Civil War, and noted that we in this institution had the power and bore the responsibility to save the Union. The stakes were high. As articulated by President Lincoln, we could either nobly save or meanly lose America as we know it, the last best hope on earth. This is a turbulent time in the American journey, and we have but one charge to keep during this moment of great fragility. Our union must be sustained, our union must be strengthened, our union must succeed. There are many throughout this country who are understandably alarmed at the turbulence of the moment, at the chaos, the dysfunction, and the extremism that has been unleashed in this chamber from the very beginning of this Congress. But this too shall pass. Our country has often confronted adversity, and the good news is we always find a way to make it to the other side. We faced adversity in the 1860s, in the middle of the Civil War, when the country was literally tearing itself apart. We faced adversity in October of 1929, when the stock market collapsed, plunging us into a Great Depression. We faced adversity in December of 1941, when a foreign power unexpectedly struck, plunging us into a world war with the evil empire of Nazi Germany. We faced adversity in the Deep South in the 1950s and 60s, when the country was struggling to reconcile the inherent contradictions between Jim Crow segregation and the glorious promises of the Constitution. We faced adversity on September 11th, 2001, when the towers and the Pentagon were unexpectedly struck, killing thousands of lives in an instant. We faced adversity right here in the House of Representatives, when on January 6, 2021, a violent mob of insurrectionists, incited by some in this chamber, overran the House floor as part of an effort to halt the peaceful transfer of power. Every time we faced adversity, the good news here in America is that we always overcome. That is the power of American exceptionalism. That is why America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. That is why I remain optimistic about the future of this country. That is why America is the last best hope on earth. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. God bless the United States of America. It is now my solemn honor and responsibility to hand over the People's Gavel here in the United States House of Representatives to a family man, a hardworking man, a Baptist man, a Southern man, a son of a firefighter's household, the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. First, a few words of gratitude. I want to thank Leader Jeffries. I do look forward to working with you on behalf of the American people. I know we see things from very different points of view, but I know that in your heart you love and care about this country and you want to do what's right. And so we're going to find common ground there, all right? I want to express my great thanks for our Speaker Emeritus, Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin has dedicated over 2 decades of his life to selfless public service, 16 of those years in this House. And you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who loves this institution more or has contributed more to it. He is the reason we're in this majority today. His impact can never be overstated, and I want to thank him for his leadership, his friendship, and the selfless sacrifice that you and Judy have made for so many years. You helped build it, Kevin, and we owe you a great debt of gratitude. I want to thank the dedicated and overworked staff of this beleaguered House. They accept praise so stoically. But Miss Susan Cole, our House reading clerk, and yes. Listen, all the clerks and all the staff, you know, they're terribly overworked. This has been a grueling process, but they have served an integral role in keeping our republic, and we thank them for that service. I know we all do. I want to thank my dedicated wife of almost 25 years, Kelly. She's not here. We couldn't get a flight in time. This happened sort of suddenly. But we're going to celebrate soon. She spent the last couple of weeks on her knees in prayer to the Lord, and she's a little worn out. We all are. I want to thank our children, Michael and Hannah and Abby and Jack and Will. All of our children sacrifice. All of them do, and we know that. And there's not a lot of perks to being a member of Congress's kid, right? And so I want to thank all of your families as well for what they endure and what they've had to endure for the last few weeks. We've been here a while. Yeah. I want to thank my faithful mother, Jeannie Johnson, who bore me at the age of 17, and my brothers Chris and Josh, and my sister Laura, and all their families, and all of our extended family. In Louisiana, family's a big deal, and we got a bunch of them. I especially want to thank all the extraordinary people of the great state of Louisiana. We have never had a Speaker of the House hail from our state, and so they've been lifting us up. I thank the people of Louisiana for the opportunity to serve you in Congress, and I'm humbled by your continuous support. We will make you proud. To my colleagues, I want to thank you all for the trust that you have instilled in me to lead us in this historic and unprecedented moment that we're in. The challenge before us is great, but the time for action is now, and I will not let you down. I want to say to the American people, on behalf of all of us here, we hear you. We know the challenges you're facing. We know that there's a lot going on in our country, domestically and abroad, and we are ready to get to work again to solve those problems, and we will. Our mission here is to serve you well, to restore the people's faith in this House, in this great and essential institution. My dad, it was mentioned, my dad was a firefighter. He was an assistant chief in the fire department in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, a little town in northwest Louisiana. On September 17, 1984, when I was 12 years old, he was critically burned and permanently disabled in the line of duty. All I ever wanted to be when I grew up was the chief of the fire department in Shreveport. But after the explosion on that fateful day, he nearly died, and it was a long road back, and it's changed all of our life trajectories. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And my dad, he lived with pain all the rest of his life for decades more. And I lost my dad to cancer 3 days before I got elected to Congress, 3 days. And he wanted to be there at my election night so badly. I'm the first college graduate in my family. This was a big deal to him. And so it was several weeks after that. It was early 2017. It was my freshman term, and it fell to me to be in the rostrum one night to serve here as Speaker Pro Tem. I thought that was a big deal until I figured out that's what you do for freshmen late at night. And I think if my memory serves, Miss Jackson Lee was winding down one of her long, eloquent speeches. And not that I was not enraptured by her speech, but I looked up at the top of the chamber there, and I saw the face of Moses staring down. And I just felt in that moment the weight of this place, right? The history that is revered here and the future that we are called to forge. And I really was just kind of almost overwhelmed with emotion. It occurred to me in that moment, it had been several weeks, and I had not had an opportunity yet to grieve my dad's passing, and I just had this sense that somehow he knew. And I had tears come to my eyes, and I was standing here, and I'm wiping them away, and then it suddenly occurs to me, the late-night C-SPAN viewers are going to think something's very wrong with the new young congressman from Louisiana. It wasn't Sheila's speech. I'm sorry. I just knew in that moment that my dad, my father, would be proud of me, and I felt that he was. And I think all of our parents are proud of what we're called to do here. I think all the American people at one time had great pride in this institution, but right now, that's in jeopardy. And we have a challenge before us right now to rebuild and restore that trust. This is a beautiful country. It's the beauty of America that allows a firefighter's kid like me to come here and serve in this sacred chamber where great men and women have served before all of us and strived together to build and then preserve what Lincoln did refer to as the last best hope of man on earth. We stand at a very dangerous time. I'm stating the obvious. We all know that. The world is in turmoil. But a strong America is good for the entire world. We are the beacon of freedom, and we must preserve this grand experiment in self-governance. It still is. We're only 247 years into this grand experiment. We don't know how long it will last, but we do know that the founders told us to take good care of it. I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear. That God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it, and to ensure that our republic remains standing as the great beacon of light and hope and freedom in a world that desperately needs it. It was in 1962 that our national motto, "In God We Trust," was adorned above this rostrum. And if you look at the little guide that they give tourists and constituents who come and visit the house, if you turn in there to about page 14 in the middle of that guide, it tells you the history of this. And it says very simply, these words were placed here above us. This motto was placed here as a rebuke of the Cold War era philosophy of the Soviet Union. That philosophy was Marxism and communism, which begins with the premise that there is no God. This is a critical distinction that is also articulated in our nation's birth certificate. We know the language well, the famous second paragraph that we used to have children memorize in school, and they don't do that so often anymore, but they should. G.K. Chesterton was the famous British philosopher and statesman, and he said one time, America is the only nation in the world that is founded upon a creed. And he said it's listed with almost theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. What is our creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, not born equal, created equal. And they are endowed by the same inalienable rights, with the same inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That is the creed that has animated our nation since its founding, that has made us the great nation that we are. And we're in a time of extraordinary crisis right now. And the world needs us to be strong. They need us to remember our creed and our admonition. Turmoil and violence have rocked the Middle East and Eastern Europe. We all know it. And tensions continue to build in the Indo-Pacific. The country demands strong leadership of this body and we must not waver. Our nation's greatest ally in the Middle East is under attack. The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done. We're going to show not only Israel, but the entire world that the barbarism of Hamas that we have all seen play out on our television screens is wretched and wrong, and we are going to stand for the good in that conflict. We have a catastrophe at our southern border. The Senate and the White House can no longer ignore the problem. From Texas to New York, wave after wave of illegal migrants are stressing our communities to their breaking points. We know that our streets are being flooded with fentanyl, and all of our communities, children, and even adults are dying from it. The status quo is unacceptable. Inaction is unacceptable, and we must come together and address the broken border. We have to do it. The skyrocketing cost of living is unsustainable, and Americans should not have to worry about how they're going to feed their family every week because they can't afford their groceries anymore. Everybody in this room should think about this. Here's the stats. Prices have increased over 17% in the last 2 years. Credit card interest rates are at the highest level in nearly 3 decades, and mortgage rates are now at a peak we haven't seen since 2001. We have to bring relief to the American people by reining in federal spending and bringing down inflation. The greatest threat to our national security is our nation's debt. And while we've been sitting in this room, that's right, the debt has crossed almost $33.6 trillion. In the time that it's going to take me to deliver this speech, we'll go up another $20 million in debt. It's unsustainable. We have to get the country back on track. Now, we know this is not going to be an easy task, and tough decisions will have to be made. But the consequences, if we don't act now, are unbearable. We have a duty to the American people to explain this to them so they understand it well, and we are going to establish a bipartisan debt commission to begin working on this crisis immediately. We all know that we also live in a time of bitter partisanship. It was noted, and it's been on display here today, right? When our people are losing their faith in government, when they're losing sight of the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, I think we got to be mindful of that. We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end. In his farewell address, thank you. In his farewell address, President Reagan explained the secret of his rapport with people. And I like to paraphrase his explanation all the time. He said, you know, they call me the great communicator, but I really wasn't that. He said, I was just communicating great things. And they're the same great things that have guided our nation since its founding. What are those great things? I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional. In this time of great crisis, it is our duty to work together, as previous generations of great leaders have, to face these great challenges and solve these great problems. I will conclude with this. The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here. My office is going to be known for members being more involved and having more influence in our processes and all the major decisions that are made here, for predictable processes and regular order. We owe that to the people. That's right. And I want to make this commitment to you, to my colleagues here and on the other side of the aisle as well. My office is going to be known for trust and transparency and accountability, for good stewardship of the people's treasure, for the honesty and integrity that is incumbent upon us, all of us, here in the People's House. Our system of government is not a perfect system. It's got a lot of challenges, but it is still the best one in the world, and we have an opportunity to preserve it. Last thing I'm going to say is a message to the rest of the world. They have been watching this drama play out for a few weeks. We've learned a lot of lessons, but you know what? Through adversity, it makes you stronger. And we want our allies around the world to know that this body of lawmakers is reporting again to our duty stations. Let the enemies of freedom around the world hear us loud and clear. The People's House is back in business. Thank you. Thank you. We will do our duty here. We will serve you well. We will govern well, and we'll make you proud in this institution again. We're going to fight every day to make sure that is true. I look forward to the days ahead. I genuinely believe in my heart that the best days of America are still ahead of us. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. I'm now ready to take the oath of office, and I ask the Dean of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Harold Rogers of Kentucky, to please administer the oath of office.
Mr. Speaker Designee, congratulations on your election.
Thank you, sir.
When our founding fathers chose a bold, new, and innovative new self-rule government, it was met by deep skepticism by the world's monarchs. They said self-rule is only a dream. Our founders said they're right. It's the American dream.
Amen.
Now it's our dream. We're in charge. The speakership of the United States House of Representatives is the crucial outpost for the well-being of the people's government, the keeper, if you will, of the dream. Sir, if you wish to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter. So help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Get the next. Would y'all like to get right into governing? For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, that has a nice ring to it, by the way. Mr. Speaker, I offer a privilege resolution to notify the Senate of the election of Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House of Representatives and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 810. Resolved that a message be sent to the Senate to inform that body that Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana, has been elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion to consider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, to notify President Biden of the election of Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, I offer a privilege resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 811. Resolved that the clerk be instructed to inform the President of the United States that the House of Representatives has elected Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Thank you. All right. The chair would take this occasion to note that the Speaker's announced policies with respect to particular aspects of the legislative process placed in the record on January 9, 2023 will continue in effect for the remainder of the 118th Congress. The chair announces that the Speaker has delivered to the clerk a letter dated October 25, 2023, listing members in the order in which each shall act as Speaker pro tempore under Clause 8B3 of Rule 1. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives. I hereby designate Representative Steve Scalise to exercise any authority regarding assembly, reassembly, convening, or reconvening of the House pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 1, Clause 12 of Rule 1, and any concurrent resolution of the concurrent Congress as may contemplate my designation of members to exercise similar authority. In the event of the death or inability of that designee, the alternate members of the House listed in the letter bearing this date that I have placed with the clerk are designated in turn for the same purpose. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable Kevin F. McCumber, Clerk of the House, Washington, D.C. Mr. Clerk, I hereby appoint the Honorable Patrick McHenry, the Honorable Adrian Smith, the Honorable Andy Harris, the Honorable Guy Reschenthaler, the Honorable Rob Whitman, the Honorable Ben Klein, the Honorable Richard Hudson, and the Honorable John Joyce to act as Speaker pro tempore to sign and roll bills and joint resolutions through the remainder of the 118th Congress. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker.
Without objection, the appointments are approved, and the House will be in recess subject to a call of chair pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1. We'll be back soon. Nothing. Yep. There we go.